All right, the holiday special rolls on here on the Just End the Suffering podcast. We just heard from Jeff Pearl about his fantastic new book about Bo Jackson. Now we're going to take a little trip down memory lane for some of the year's best moments in the podcast. Joining me today to do this here, one of my co-hosts over on the Sky Guys podcast, who you hear from on this feed quite a bit, Nick Fraietta is here. Nick, how are you?
Mike, doing great. Happy to be on Just End the Suffering again.
Yep.
And I'd never done the clip show with you, so I'm gonna. I guess I'm learning as we go.
Yeah.
Excited to do it.
All right, for anybody who's new to this podcast, the holiday special episode, every year we have a big guest. Then before we get to our NFL picks, we do something pop culturally at the end with Sandra Rosa usually. But before we do that, we go back some of the best moments of the year in the podcast. So we're gonna look back at some of the fun clips, fun moments, and Nick, you do pop up here a couple of times.
Here's my question for you: do I pop up ever as a Just End the Suffering guest?
I do not remember. I know at least Sky Guys, you were definitely there a couple of times.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, I gotta pull up my list, and I gotta see. I have a specific order I have these in. We're gonna go chronologically. That work for you?
Yeah, that's what I figured we would do. So it looks like we're starting around,
January.
I guess, January. Yeah.
Yeah. So remember the good old days when Joe Judge was the Giant head coach?
I wouldn't say the good old days, but I do remember.
Yeah, you remember the infamous way his tenure ended with the quarterback sneak play?
I do, and if I recall correctly, it was against Washington.
Yes, it was. It was against Washington, and ironically, the team the Giants got to compete with the playoff spot for this year. But anyway, after that game happened, Week 18 last year, our good friend Justin Diaz came on the podcast, and he shared his thoughts on this play. So let's go back to episode, believe it or not, 242. This is the quarterback sneak play. Justin's commentary on it. When I see that, if I was John Mara, like, he would not finish the game. He would have been fired on the spot. Like, the fact that he actually had a job the rest of the game is mind-boggling to me.
I totally agree. It's an embarrassment to the sport. I mean, I saw Dan Orlovsky today said there were like 3,000 third and eight plays this year, something like that. Obviously a very high number. I'm sure you can guess how many plays of those were a QB sneak. One. I mean, there might have been one of those in NFL history, and in that scenario, third and eight. When you compare that to his introductory press conference where he said we're going to be relentless and treat, it was such an absurd quote. It sounded he knows how to say it like a fascinating, intriguing quote. He said like we're going to treat every play like it has a history of its own. Like that attitude's great. I love that attitude. Yeah, treat every play like it could be your last, and it could be a big play. And he couldn't have done the more polar opposite. He didn't even trust his quarterback to hand off the ball. And not like, what are you freaking kidding me? Yeah. That even a handoff would have pissed me off, because in today's NFL, you try and drive down the field, and you try to make a big play. You don't just hate. I mean, I actually don't care that much because I haven't watched them in months. Or like, maybe I shouldn't admit that as you have me on as the diehard Giants fan, but I mean that's obvious. How could you watch them? But I still get mad when I hear these things because they're keeping him. Like he gave up. He doesn't understand. You don't punt. You don't play to punt in 2022. That's not how football is played anymore. It hasn't been played that way in 30 years. Troy Aikman and John Elway knew they were throwing the ball pretty far down the field. Like people have been able to throw the ball far down the field for decades now. Judge, you freaking clown! You don't play for the punt. It's the most pathetic mindset. And it's so cowardly for someone that just likes to get up on this podium and act tough and say, we ain't some clown show. You literally are exactly a clown show. You coach like you're scared of your own shadow.
Man, it's always fun when Justin gets off on a rant there.
Always, yep. Yeah. I always enjoy whenever he comes on. I always make sure to listen to any of his segments.
Yeah, we recorded, I think that was in that weird limbo period where like Joe Judge hadn't been fired yet, and we started waiting for Mara to make a move, and then he did make the move. So like that was a fun spot to get Justin in.
You must have been filming or recording because he got fired 2 days after the game. You must have recorded the day after the game or the night of the game.
Yeah, recorded Monday night. He got fired Tuesday morning.
Yeah. So that was his last game there, and unbelievable. I mean, everything Justin said is completely right. It was mind-boggling, and I'm glad we don't have to deal with that anymore.
Absolutely. Here, let's go to us on the Sky Guys here. This is about the time of year we're talking about the Book of Boba Fett here, and we're going to the finale for this clip here. You have an idea where we're going with this one?
I don't. I was going to guess Pete with the Power Rangers, but I don't know.
It is involved Pete here, so this is a very infamous moment from the Book of Boba Fett Chapter 7, Episode 253 in the Just and the Suffering feed. So let's check out our memory of a very famous spin move.
Did one of the Cyberpunk Power Rangers have to do a spin move before?
Yeah, ridiculous spin move.
Did anyone Nick caught it, but he's protecting Black K, and he was like, we're getting shot at. Spin move, and then I'll shoot. I don't think anyone ever thinks that way. That was ridiculous. Whoever made that scene up and told him, it'd be really cool, is if you, as you're getting shot at, you spun in place, didn't move at all, didn't dodge anything, just spun and then shoot.
I think that's later in the episode. I feel like it's because I haven't linked up with Black K yet. We'll definitely touch on that again, but Nick, I do feel like it's a little bit out of the Black Widow playbook where Yelena is saying to Natasha, why you always do those flips? They don't add anything to the fight here.
Yeah, it does. And just so Pete knows, he's not alone. I found an entire article on the spin move just now that I posted at 10:15 this morning. People it made no sense. What was the point? He was already there. It's one thing if you do a 180 because you turn around. He did a 360 to end up in the same position he was already in.
Yeah.
Did he get leverage or something?
He got speed. The bullet came faster because he spun.
Yeah, that Book of Boba Fett, Nick, I feel like that's an infamous sore spot for Pete.
I vividly remember that exact clip happening. I remember the article, finding it. I remember all of it. And here we are, 10 months later, at least, probably. I think that show ended around...
Yeah, February.
First or second week of February, right?
Yeah, right around the Super Bowl ended.
Yeah, and so it's about 10 months later now, and it hasn't gotten any better, that spin move. That was utterly ridiculous. And to this day, on the Sky Guys podcast, Pete brings this up probably on average every 3 episodes, that spin move.
Yeah, I think we were talking at least 4 or 5 times during Andor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
So, definitely another... So far, we're 2 for 2 on embarrassing moments and things that we love.
Yep, and the spin move is fantastic. It's gonna go down in me forever. And if you've seen the YouTube video of the ridiculous things they have spinning and exploding, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
All right, let's go up ahead to March a little bit. March, man, is how far are you from St. Peter's now, where you are in Jersey?
Not close.
So you're not
close.
You weren't tempted to go down to campus and hang out when they were having the magical March Madness run?
No. St. Peter's is in Jersey City, right?
Yeah.
An hour, maybe a little less.
Yeah,
maybe 45 minutes.
Yeah, but you would say that March Madness, the most memorable thing about this was the St. Peter's run this year.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I had our college basketball guy, Troy Moriello, on the podcast. He's the host of the Seeing Red podcast. I don't know if you know, Nick, or if you've watched the Craig Carton show on Fox on FS1 in the mornings. He's actually the researcher on that show.
Oh, okay.
He gets on screen sometimes. This is before the Carton show era, so Troy had some thoughts on St. Peter's, so let's hear what he had to say. This is from episode 262. All in all, this is still going to be what I think might be the greatest Cinderella run the tournament's ever seen.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. The resolve that they showed, taking down, 3 teams on their way to the Elite Eight. We've never seen anything like it before. You kind of had a feeling that when it did end, it was going to kind of go up in flames in a blowout like we saw on Sunday against North Carolina. I don't think anyone saw them losing like a 5-point game or something like that. I think, in my opinion, when they did lose, it was going to be something like that where a team just overpowered them. But yeah, it doesn't take away the incredible run that they had. What a job that Shaheen Holloway did at St. Peter's, getting them all the way to the Elite Eight. Like I said, we've never seen this before. That's what March Madness is just all about. If you would have gone back 2 weeks ago and told anyone St. Peter's is going to be playing in the Elite Eight against North Carolina, you could probably count on one hand or two hands how many people in the world had that on their bracket going into or right after Selection Sunday. So, it just speaks to this tournament and what's great about this tournament. And, it's the unpredictability of, who knows what's going to happen. This is a prime example of that. A 15 seed from right around here in Jersey City, making it all the way to the Elite Eight. Very, very cool story, getting them on the national stage. So although it ended kind of poorly for them, doesn't take away that's just a crazy run that they had.
This was absolutely wild. I remember this is happening, especially because we are both Iona alums. We play in the same conference, St. Peter's, and I was usually in there a lot. One and done. St. Peter's was one of the smallest endowments in the country. It has legit a high school gym as their as their setup here. They go to the Elite Eight and come within 40 minutes of the Final Four.
Kind of reminds me of Loyola, what they did a few years ago, except Loyola, people compare these a lot, but Loyola won the championship once.
Yeah, the 60s.
So it's really not that comparable. Like, this is a much different situation. And what St. Peter's did was, let's just say, good for the MAC, right?
It was great for the MAC, but really
good for the MAC. But they lost all their players, unfortunately. They all went to
and their coach.
They all transferred to Seton Hall, right?
Yeah, and the coach went there.
Yeah, so they lost everybody, unfortunately for them. But it does help put the conference on the map and the team on the map. But I guess to his point of everyone, you can count everyone on one hand, two hands who had that outside of the university. Of course, you have the people who, when you go to school there, you put your team all the way, even though they have no chance. I guess those people's brackets actually did pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, every year I try to pick Iona win a game, they have not come through for me, so maybe this year will be the year if they get there.
Yeah, maybe. We'll find out.
All right, next up here, let's go ahead for a minute. Let's go down to back to spring training, like in baseball after the lockout was over. Your brother brother's a regular on this podcast. We do the over-unders every single year, so he did. I clocked him this year on those.
I remember that he picked the Tigers.
Yeah, as an over.
Am I right about that? As an over? And I think he may have had the Giants as an over, which I told him was a big mistake.
Yeah, he had an over 85.5. I understood the logic of that one.
I told him that's a line that Vegas puts there on purpose to get people to take the over, and they know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, so he went 2-4. I went 5-1, and one of my winning picks was the Met number here. So here's my rationale for the Met over. As you talking with your brother at this point in the podcast, it's episode 263. All right, I'm up now. I'm gonna take another over here. I'm gonna jump on the Mets over the 19.5 wins because I do think that the way they built this team is a lot better than it's been in the past. They have more pitching. They have better pitching depth than they do. The lineup, they made some necessary changes right now. There's more contact. There's less strikeouts. They're going to play better defensively, particularly up the middle of the field. And I know the division is tricky, but I think this is a low bar to clear. Plus, that the owner is willing to spend whatever it takes. They want to take out money in season to get a big bat that they need or a big bullpen arm. I think there's going to be commitment to improve from the Mets. I think they get bounce backs from Lindor and some of the other offensive guys. I'll take the over in the 19.5.
The Mets were on my list for the overs too. I like it. I think it's a good pick.
Yeah, I just feel like I think you and I picked them going over each of the last 4 years doing this. So I feel like this year we're due to get it right.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while since they went over, but we've been picking it over and over again, and eventually I think it's going to happen.
I think this is going to the accurate predictions category. I feel like I had a pretty good read on what the Mets were going to do back in April.
Doesn't it this was 8 months ago you made this prediction. Hearing it now, I'm sitting here of course, that's obvious because we saw the season play in front of our eyes. Think about the Mets at 90.5 for how good they were this season. Yeah. Seems like a joke.
And that was right before they lost DeGrom, too, because never dropped by 2 after DeGrom got hurt.
Team who won 90 games this year, for reference, was Seattle. How much better are the Mets than Seattle?
A lot better.
A lot better. That's right. It sounds so obvious when you say it now, because we have 2020 video. Hindsight's 2020. But just curious, who did you miss out on?
The one I missed out on was the Toronto Blue Jays at 92.5. They had 92, so I almost went 6 for 6.
Oh, wow. Yeah, wow. Look at that.
I was that close to the perfect run.
Yeah, that's something.
Speaking of perfect runs here, did you know we do a mock draft on the podcast every year now when the NFL draft rolls around?
When did that start? This year?
Well, I think in 2020 we started this. So this is the third year running. I do it with Alan Austin, who is one of our great contributors to the pop culture section. He is a big NFL guy. So we did some mock draft picks here, and I had the Jets on one of my picks here. I took the number 10. So here, I explain why the Jets are going to take Garrett Wilson, number 10 in the draft. This is from episode 266. They've been doing a lot of homework on the receiver class. They've had basically every top receiving prospect come to Florham Park to talk to them. I think they're still trying to get the proven receiver where they could have a guy like A.J. Brown or Deebo Samuel come in and be the guy right away. But I think if they stay put at 10, I think they're taking a receiver.
Now, why Garrett Wilson over the others? That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, I think in terms of just, pure route running ability, I think he's the most polished of the group. Drake London has upside in terms of his physical tools, but I think they want a guy who's more of a classic guy that can move all around the field, as opposed to like a true burner like Drake London is.
No, I think if you're the Jets, you want to give people that Wilson can rely on, who are probably a little bit more polished than some of the other prospects. So I think you sacrifice certain skills over reliability at this point for where the Jets are at. That's just my viewpoint of it.
I'm glad they made that pick. That worked out very well for the Jets.
It did, and I'm looking at the receivers in the draft right now, because a lot of times you forget when you get into the mix of the season, you forget who was the rookie, who went when, and this and that. Great receiver class, really.
Yeah, I mean, you got Drake London's with the Falcons. He gets opportunities.
I mean, the first round alone, you have London, you have Wilson, Olave. We're still waiting on Jamison Williams. You have
Burks,
Dodson, you have Treylon Burks, and then even in the second round, you have like Christian Watson, and well, we all know what just happened to Wan'Dale Robinson, but there's some good receivers here.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's always because I feel like there's so many good receivers in the draft now that like it doesn't make sense to go trade for a guy, because your odds of finding somebody who can trade right away out of college is pretty good.
Even Sky Moore in the second, related to our friend Sly Moore on Endor.
Yeah, it's Sly Moore's human cousin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of the pop culture here, we're gonna take a dive into an accurate prediction from our friend John Stanko. You know how John Stanko's a huge movie guy.
I do.
Yeah, he had some interesting thoughts on Top Gun Maverick in our summer movie preview back in right before Memorial Day. This is before we knew how big a phenomenon the movie would be. So here is Stanko on Top Gun Maverick from episode 270 even.
Listen, I love the first Top Gun. Me and Emma will just dance to Danger Zone in the kitchen. It's one thing that we do. I'm so excited for this movie, and I'm stoked the reviews are also astronomically positive. I have not seen a negative review on IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes when I've gone and peeked. Every podcast I listen to has great buzz about this movie. Tom Cruise has poured his heart and soul into this, and it seems to be worth it, which is absolutely crazy that a movie that's made 3 decades after the original still has the fanfare after this. This is such dad energy of the people in their mid-40s and 50s going to see this movie are going to be absolutely stoked out of their minds. And it's going to make a ton of money, an absolute ton. It's going to be 2 back-to-back major summers for Cruise, too, because he has Top Gun Maverick, and then he has Mission Impossible next summer. So Tom Cruise is taking over summer 2022 and 2023.
He did nail that. I mean, Top Gun Maverick, they have $1.5 billion. So I would still highly recommend that anybody who's not seen it yet, go watch this movie. It was really good.
I'm on that. I'm on the list of people who haven't seen it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have Paramount Plus, it is coming there on streaming on the 23rd of December.
Yeah, I feel like a big part of this movie, with why it did so well, is I feel like it was the welcome back to the theater movie.
Oh yeah, I mean, like,
you know what I mean?
In Spider-Man, like, No Way Home was a
Spider-Man was that movie. Spider-Man was that movie. It was the welcome back to the movie, but it was a winter movie. This was like our first summer back in the movie.
It was the first big summer blockbuster post-COVID.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, COVID technically is still going on, but in terms of like more normalcy, like Top Gun Maverick, sort of the way welcomes back, it was a really good experience too. Because if you watched it in a theater, it was incredible.
I'll have to add it to the list.
Yeah, definitely add it to the list here. And I know you were a basketball guy here, so I wanted to make sure I got you an actual NBA clip here. So we're going to talk about the Knicks here. So you know, like the Knicks have sort of been this perpetual cycle of never doing good beyond, you know, like at best like a second round playoff run.
Yeah, for what is it, 22 years now?
Roughly. We do have the guy some Sorry to Interrupt podcast on in June to sort of do the NBA draft and get ready for the offseason. Sean from the Sorry to Interrupt podcast had his take on what's right wrong. So I'll play it for you and get your opinion, see if you think he's on something here. So this is episode 279 about the New York Knickerbockers.
I think the biggest problem that the Knicks have is that they are not an attraction for the best players. So the players they get are guys that other teams don't really want to pay. And on top of that, too, you've also got young guys that they hype up or their fan base hypes up more so than they probably are worth hyping up. And as bad as it is that Thibodeau is not playing guys when the season's long over to figure out what their value is, or at least see if they're going to be sticking here. I really don't. I think he's probably saying, look, I get these guys in practice all the time. They're not as good as you think they are. So with those things being, all factors, I really don't know what the Knicks' best likelihood is of, really, really increasing the value and probably the productivity of this roster.
All right, so I'll go to you on this one. What do you think about his assessment of the Knicks?
I think about the Knicks. I think the first point's absolutely right. They're not a destination. They were always a destination. They're supposed to be a destination. It's New York, so, everyone thought they were a destination. But unfortunately for them, they are not a destination. And I completely agree that the fans overvalue a lot of their players. Personally, I think RJ Barrett is basically a bust. And I'll die on that hill. He's in his fourth year and he's shooting less than 40%. I just don't understand the hype about him. I feel like if he's on any other team, it would be, this guy's awful. But because he's a Knick, I don't see that. As you look at the top 5 in that NBA draft, you have Zion, Morant, him, DeAndre Hunter, and Darius Garland. I think he's clearly the worst of those 5 players. And that's a shame. Not to say he's a horrible player. But of those 5, and I think you leave that 2019 draft as a failed draft. You picked the wrong player out of those 5 guys, I think. And then completely agree with his point with you have a guy like Tom Thibodeau, and you're not this season so much, but you're throwing Derrick Rose out there for 35 minutes a game when you have, or Julius Randle out there for 35 minutes a game when you have Obi Toppin sitting on the bench. You don't even know if he's good yet. He looks great, but he plays 8 minutes, so who knows? Yeah,
it's a fascinating scenario because especially it's a lot of these Knicks fans, especially the past few years, whether it's like, need to play Emmanuel quickly more. You got to start him. You got to get Obi Toppin more run, Cam Reddish more run. And then, this coach there is clearly saying, hey, they're fine as they are. You guys think they're going to become starters. And we can see they're not.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate, but basketball's probably, you hear a lot about, purgatory with sports.
Yep.
You hear that, you don't want to go 7-9 or 7-10 in football. You don't want to do that. Basketball's where it's the worst.
Yep.
Where the purgatory can really catch you for a long time. Because in football, you get one good offensive tackle. Next thing you know, your running game starts working. Next thing you know, your play action starts working. Next thing you know, because your defense isn't on the field, they're doing good. One player can turn the whole team around. You see teams go 3-13 and then 11-5 the next year. In basketball, if you don't get that star, which you're not going to get being the 11 seed, it's really hard to turn it around. Near impossible to turn it around.
Yeah, it's nuts because you think about it here. It's you feel like in the NBA, I feel like if you are anywhere from the 5 seed to picking 7 in the draft, that's purgatory.
Yeah. At least when you're a 5 seed, though, you could potentially bring somebody in to make you a top 3 seed. You've seen that before. We've seen it with the Celtics.
Yep.
We've seen it with the Heat. Well, not really the Celtics. We saw it with the Heat. When the Heat were a 6 seed and then they go and get LeBron and Bosh, and next thing you know, they're basically a dynasty. It's possible when you're that good, you're 1 or 2 players away. But if you're the 11 or 12 seed, you're 1 or 2 players away from being the 5 seed. No one wants to be anyway.
Yeah, that's where the Knicks sort of are right now. So Jalen Brunson, though, has worked out for the most part.
The Knicks. I think the Knicks are the definition right now of
purgatory.
Average. If you're better than the Knicks, you're a good team. If you're worse than the Knicks, you're a bad team.
Yep.
You're right in the middle.
Yep, that's for sure. And somebody who's not average here. Can we have seen the year that Edwin Diaz had coming?
Those trumpets were playing a lot this year.
They certainly were here. And I think in the middle of the breakout season here, I had Tim Ryder from the Apple NYM blog. So he came on here. He had some thoughts about Edwin Diaz. Let's hear what he had to say. It's in episode 282.
Oh, through the roof. His stuff is just so nasty. I've talked about it a bunch on my podcast, Simply Amazing. It took him some time to go from being just a thrower to a pitcher. The confidence that he has, not only in his four seam, which, years ago, you remember when he first got here, his four seam has a lot of movement. It moves like a sinker almost. It goes side to side just so much. He kind of had to rein that in and harness that, keep it not only on the plate, but off the middle of the plate. And, he's been able to do that extremely effectively. You look at his slider, which a couple of years ago, if he wasn't feeling it, he wouldn't lean on it. It's always been absolutely nasty, but the confidence that he has in his slider now, and I think he said it in a couple of post-game interviews, oh, how does the slider feel tonight? just one word answer, nasty. And, it's such a weapon that, he can use it against the best hitters in baseball. And these guys are, swinging a toothpick up there. And it's really, really fun. And, I think he's a surefire Hall of Fame. Easy, take it easy. Surefire All-Star selection going into the middle of July. And, the step forward that he's taken and what his contract status might be moving forward. It's all very intriguing stuff.
Well, he did pitch like a Hall of Fame level this year in terms of how great he was. He gets the big contract here. I think Tim makes a good point about the slider here, because I think when we first got here, he sucked so bad with the not going to look at the slider. I think a lot of that was just due to the fact that baseball was terrible. Remember, that was the 19 year where the baseball was like a rocket ship and the ball was slick as hell. I think the normal ball, he sort of stabilized.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though, if he does 8 more years, maybe 10 more years in a row of exactly what he did last year, he definitely is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, he's got time.
So let's do that. Let's do 10 years in a row as a dominant 1.31 ERA, and then maybe we can see him in Cooperstown.
I'd take that.
You definitely would. Hopefully they're all for the Mets.
Yeah, well, right now at least 3 of them are, because he has an opt after 3 years.
Yep.
All right, now let's go to another interesting moment here. You remember the captain on ESPN, the Derek Jeter documentary?
I do. I watched it. I think I did one of the episodes with you, the first one, I think, or the second.
Yeah, you did the first 2 hours with me, that one here. So I think one thing we know is of the course documentary, I feel like the A-Rod was sort of the target of the director, Randy Welk. I felt like he was sort of like the whipping boy for all of Jeter's problems.
Yeah, if you remember, I spoke about that. I said that I feel like they were just kind of throwing everything at him, and it wasn't really his fault.
Yeah, it certainly was here. And one of our friends, Joe Chaffee, came on. He did, I think, episodes 5 and 6 of The Captain, and he particularly had a specific instance where he felt like A-Rod was getting unfairly blamed here for this. So let's check out what Joe had to say about The Captain. It's episode 287.
The steroid stuff.
Yep.
A lot of Jeter's teammates, Clemens, Pettit, Giambi, Jason Grimsley, not he's big.
Sheffield.
Knobloch, Sheffield. Only A-Rod.
Gets the blame.
Only A-Rod. How?
Yeah.
How? Like, again, you talk about like an editing thing. How do you only bring up A-Rod in the steroid era in baseball? Like, how?
I mean, if I'm A-Rod watching this edit, basically seeing that I'm being dragged the entire thing, I would be pissed.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. I think he's not wrong.
I'm with I call him the Joj.
Yeah.
I'm with the Joj. Me and the Joj have talked about this, off this air, in person numerous times. We're in complete agreement. We're both big Alex Rodriguez fans, both big Derek Jeter fans too. I mean, what he did for the Yankees, we're both big Yankee fans. So, but they completely threw him under the bus here, and I don't know why. He reminds me a lot of Giancarlo Stanton. It's like he came here and he was just. I think it's because they make a lot of money. They're just villains right away, no matter what they do. And now I see people turning the other way when it comes to Stanton and A-Rod, because I see guys like Joey Gallo, I see guys like Sonny Gray, who they don't do well. They just laugh and they just leave and say I didn't want to be in New York anyway. Which, by the way, I ran into Joey Gallo a few weeks ago. And that's exactly what he said. Not joking. That's a true story. It's a true story. And you have guys like Giancarlo and A-Rod. They get booed. You know what they do? They show up earlier the next morning and work their ass off to become a better player. And those are the people you should be respecting. Those are the people you should be criticizing.
Okay, first things first. I think this is sort of Randy Wilkins' choice. Do you agree with me on that? I feel like the director sort of like, I'm going to make A-Rod the villain in my story. I feel like that's number one. And Jeter signed off on it.
I guess so. And
number 2, I need to hear more about this Joey Gallo story. Like, where did you run into him? Like, how long was this conversation?
I didn't speak with him, but I did run into him. It is in Dallas.
Yeah,
because I guess he lives there because he played for Texas for a while. And a friend of the podcast, a friend of ours, Joe Frederick, had a long conversation with him, and basically just said to him, I was always a big fan of yours. It's a shame what happened in New York. And his response was, I never wanted to be there anyway. I was miserable from the day I got there.
Well, it sort of makes sense. You look at his highlights performance on the field win.
Didn't get much better in LA. So I don't know if he wanted to be there either. Does he only need to be in one specific town to hit well? We'll find out, I guess, when he plays in the minors next year.
I'm calling my shot right now. Joey Gallo's a Pittsburgh Pirate next year.
Well, I actually have some insider information on Joey Gallo because he did say that he is trying to get back to our friend Joe Frederick. He is trying to get back on Texas.
Yep.
On the Rangers, and if they don't offer him a contract, apparently the Astros have expressed that they are interested.
Interesting. So information. This is also being recorded.
That doesn't necessarily mean they'll sign him, but they had basically said we would like to talk, and he said he wants to. Basically said I want to sign it with the Rangers, but if they don't want me, I'll hear you guys out.
All right. So this is something we'll put in the time capsule here because we're recording this episode segment on December 1st. So when this podcast comes out, we'll let you guys know in the pick segment if Nick's information was accurate.
We'll see. It's not my information. It was Joey Gallo's information.
It was information you have collected from a friend who collected from Joey Gallo.
Yeah, I mean, I was standing right there. I just didn't talk to him.
Yeah, so our friend Joe got the information from Joey Gallo. And
I was right there. I mean, I heard him. I just didn't butt into the conversation myself. And what I found so funny was it's Joey Gallo. You know, he's whether or not we like him or not, he's a big. I don't want to say star, but he's a famous player, right? A famous person.
He's all star.
What's funny is when he left we were at some sort of club. When he left the club, for some reason, he found the need to go up to one of the guys we were with, tap him on the shoulder, and said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm leaving." And the guy's like, "You're telling me?" Very, very strange. He was like, "What? Why are you telling me you're leaving? I didn't even know. Like, I appreciate it. Thanks. Get home safe, I guess."
I guess you made quite the impression on him.
Yeah, I guess so. It wasn't our friend Joe Frederick. It was somebody else. It was one of Joe's friends that he just said hi to real quick, and he felt the need to say goodbye to him. Very strange.
Yeah, so that's it. So a Joey Gallo connection to the podcast.
Maybe we can have him on one day.
Maybe we can. And speaking of people who I'd love to have on here, I mean, like, did you see the famous Hard Knocks moment of Aiden Hudson singing Billie Jean?
No, actually.
So there's this great moment from the Hard Knocks premiere of the Detroit Lions this year where they're doing the rookie talent show in the locker room. Aiden Hudson gets up there. He sings Billie Jean to the entire Lions team. The clip goes viral because it is absolutely ridiculous. I covered the episode with our pop culture correspondent, Sandra Rosa, here. So this is our conversation about the Aiden Hudson Billie Jean moments. I'll give you a little flavor from that. This is episode 288. This was amazing.
I was laughing the entire time watching this. It was so hilarious and amazing.
Yeah, not only does Aiden Hudson have like a pretty good singing voice, he has the lyrics down. He's got some good moves to go with the song.
I just love like how he messes up in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then he's like, wait, no, I got this. And then like it cuts after they're singing to his family. He's like, yeah, they're like, yeah, you're really still living off that high of like performing. And I thought that was the funniest thing because this is like Lily White Boy from the suburbs of like Detroit singing Billie Jean and everyone's getting into it. It was amazing. It was so funny.
Yeah, and you have to watch the video because at one point they cut to a big shot of the whole auditorium. There's a guy sitting in the second row, rips his shirt off, flings it forward. A guy in the front row and yell just grabs it, one hand, no look, and immediately starts waving in the air. Like, this is incredible.
I was gonna say, if you're on TikTok, it's definitely trending on the For You page as well. So like, it's just amazing. Like, if you watch it over and over again, you can't even imagine. It feels like a glitch in the Matrix.
Yeah, so you got to check out this clip. This is an amazing Hard Knocks piece of content.
Sorry, I lost the mute button.
Yeah.
Ooh, I think I'm Pete.
Yeah, Pete challenged you there.
I got to check it out. I rarely watch Hard Knocks, so I gotta check it out. Unfortunately, it's not a show you need to catch up on. You kind of just watch this year's, so that's good.
Unless you're watching the in-season one, the Cardinal one.
Yeah, that came out like a month ago, right?
Yeah.
What I mean is I don't have to go back to 2001 and watch. It's not like a sitcom or a drama show where I got to follow the storyline throughout all the seasons. Like, I watched the NFL. I think I know most of the storyline.
Yeah, and teaser for the podcast here. Sanders will be on later. We're going to be talking about the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. That's going to be coming up at the end of the podcast here.
So I've yet to watch that. I got to watch that.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching it over the weekend before we record that one with Sam. So that's going to be coming up here next on my queue. But let's talk a little about your football team, the New York Giants here. I mean, going into the year, what would you say your expectation level was for this team?
I actually thought they were going to win 7 games. And if they lose out, they'll win 7 games. So we'll see.
We will see. I also had a chance to surprisingly talk to Mike Sando of The Athletic. He does the Pick Six column every week where he gives us 6 observations every week. Talked to him before the season about a lot of things, including the Giants. Here's what Mike Sando had to say about the Giants. This is from episode 292.
Well, I think some of this is an evaluation of what was there previously and just how sort of bad that was it, because obviously they didn't come in and ramp up the roster to make a run this year, right? I mean, it is ground floor and the expectation should be pretty low. But I think if we feel like Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are competent people, right? Like they're their first time in the role, obviously, but if we feel like a lot better about them in terms of what was there before, then do they just get a boost? It's a little bit like I'm not going to say that it's the same type of thing as Jacksonville because it was different deficiencies, but like the fact that the Jacksonville just who was there before left upgrades Jacksonville before we talk about who's there now, right?
Yeah.
So were the Giants just kind of in such a funk with the whole Dave Gettleman era and what had become of the coaching staff that just by removing that, or do they get some wins? Right? Do they just sort of come to the surface at least? I think that's an interesting part about them. And I know you had put down, for our potential topics today, like who's a team that could, disappoint or surprise. And I don't think the Giants are going to surprise anybody like they're going to be in the playoffs necessarily. But I think the expectations have been suppressed so far, and then they weren't really ramped up by the new regime, right? They came in and were like almost admitting, hey, this is a process that could they just be better than people expect? Because they're not, no one's expecting anything, and the expectations have been suppressed for so long.
I think he nailed it, to be honest with you. That's incredible, foresight to say, the bar is so low with the Giants that, people don't realize that just because, Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are not Joe Judge and Dave Gettleman, that this team will automatically improve.
Yep. I mean, you've heard it from me how many times now?
Yeah.
How many times have you heard it from me that that with Dave Gettleman especially and Joe Judge, that it was just never going anywhere. And it's so funny when you hear people talk about the Giants and they say they'll do things like defend some of the moves that Dave Gettleman made. For example, could have been, in hindsight, it looks awful, but I'll defend the Kenny Golladay thing because, at the time, I thought it was a good move. I think we all did, but look what happened. I mean, I can't fault him for that because at the time, I thought it was a great move. So did everyone else. It's just obviously been such a bad job, but people will defend moves like the Leonard Williams trade or they defend the Barkley pick and this and that. But then at the same time, they go, I can't blame Jones because he has no one to throw to. And it's like, well, he's had 4 years of no one to throw to because of the general manager. How do you not see that? That was his job to build someone to throw to, and he didn't get anyone to throw to. That's his fault.
Yeah, that is his fault. There's a lot of things here, but you know what? You got to feel confident at least. You have the right people in charge. I mean, once they get more talent, that team's going to be really good.
I definitely feel they have the right people in charge. I feel that their talent is literally the same it was last year because, as he just said, they didn't really make any changes in the offseason, nor should they have. But you look at the Giants, at the time of recording, they're 7-4. Yep. They could easily be 2-8, 2-9, easily.
Oh, no one would have blinked an eye either.
And if Joe Judge was the coach, I bet you they are 2-9. I bet you they lose to Tennessee because they don't go for it. They don't go for it at the end of the game. Absolutely don't go for it, and they lose that game.
Jacksonville.
I bet you they lose to Green Bay. I bet you they lose to Baltimore. And then I bet you that, and then I can't say for sure, but I just think personally they would have lost to Jacksonville and Houston. They'd have 5 more losses.
Yeah, this is literally a Brian Daboll masterpiece here. I feel like this is the roughest year to win Coach of the Year because so many teams are coming out of nowhere to be good. So I feel bad for him in that sense, but I feel like this team is really in good shape for the future.
Yeah, I can't see him winning Coach of the Year because I think it's a clear choice, but we will see. I think it has, especially with the way they're playing, I think it has to go to McDaniel.
Yeah, that's up there. I mean, Sirianni's up there because the Eagles are 10-1. Salah's got to be in the mix. Pete Carroll's got to be in the mix. There's a lot of options.
Well, it depends on how it plays out because I've said it before. I personally think the Seahawks. I think I said it before. I don't know if it was off the air right before we started here, if it was on here, that the Seahawks are I think they've really hit the top of the roller coaster there. I think they're falling way down, and I think if they finish 8 and 9, it's going to be hard to give him Coach of the Year.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, and you remember
when if you have, well, go ahead.
No, you can finish up.
I was just saying, 8 and 9 Coach of the Year is compared to, I think the Dolphins are going to go like 12 and 5.
Yeah.
So I would think that's your Coach of the Year.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. And speaking of potential Coach of the Year candidates, Robert Saleh got a lot of people's bad side after week 1. Remember the receipt thing where he was talking about how he's going to keep the receipts?
I do, and I hope he did keep those receipts because he'd be cashing them in now.
I have one more to add to the list because we had some fun with that one. Me and Nick D'Alessio during the week 2 pick segment. This is episode 293. Talking about Robert Saleh's receipts.
And I'm taking. We're all taking receipts on all the people who continually mock and say that we ain't going to do anything. I'm taking receipts, and I'm going to be more than happy to share them with all of y'all when it's all said and done.
So he went straight to the office, Nick. He's taking the receipts, and they're going to shove it in everybody's face when the Jets do well.
Yeah, minus all of the bad things that we did in the first quarter, we played pretty good, Like, how do you, that's duh, like, oh yeah, well, if we didn't make mistakes, the game would have been better. Like, I don't know. As a head coach, you're supposed to, say things that makes you feel like you're confident in your team. It's just like, after that performance, for him to be like, yeah, no, but like things look good, we're going to be fine. It feels kind of hollow, feels kind of empty.
The thing that bothers me is the whole, we're keeping receipts, everybody who mocks us here. And let's be clear here about this team. They have won the combined 6 games the past 2 seasons. They've not made the playoffs in 11 years. They've picked in the top 5 of the draft for the past 5 years. They have lost 13 consecutive games in September by the combined score of 330 to 140. I don't want to hear about taking receipts and all this stuff. You are terrible. Like, and the Jet fan is tired of this bullshit. Like, where every year the season's over before you hit Halloween.
Yeah. And it's like what I was saying before. If we came away from this game and we were like, you know what, we were like a couple of plays away from maybe winning, then like I'd feel okay. But at no point in this game, short of like maybe the opening 2 drives, did it feel like we were even in it. It kind of felt like we were always a step behind and then we just couldn't even get into it. So if he's collecting receipts, I hope he has like a big binder with a lot of room for them, because he's going to be collecting a lot of receipts.
Add this one to the list, Robert. I mean, like, this is not his team that is at any confidence right now is going to be doing any good, because again, no quarterback right now. Joe Flacco is a statue in the pocket. Like, they looked awful for most of this game. And at what point do we actually have to win games, not just take down notes of who's mocking us? I'll take the L on that one.
So, you said season over by Halloween. Now, you didn't predict it would happen, but you said I'm sick of the season being over by Halloween. This is the holiday special episode, and the Jets have a very realistic chance and a clear path into making the postseason. You got you have 7 wins already. You have 2 extremely winnable games at the end of the season, plus 4 other games. And if you take one, it's probably enough.
It's nice. It's the first time in 7 years since
it is nice, huh?
Yeah. First time in 7 years they've been in this position.
And you got an extremely talented team, and the defense speaks for itself. You could just take the entire defense, say we're set. The offense, it looks like you're set literally everywhere except the quarterback. And you know what? Mike White showed you a lot last week, so if he keeps that momentum up, that's great. If he doesn't, then you got one hole, a big hole, but one hole.
Yeah, one hole. Well, speaking of a team that does not have many holes right now, the New Jersey Devils came out of nowhere, sort of red hot. So I did do a hockey preview with Christopher, not the Mad Dog Russo, the host of the Sports in the Waiting Room podcast. So he weighed in on the Devils here. I'll give you his thoughts on this team. So this is from episode 290. I think it's 299, so almost 300.
Yeah, they should be pushing for a wild card spot. I don't know if they'll make the playoffs this year, but it should be a year where they look, I think, even better than they did last year. I think they actually looked fairly good last year. They knocked off some of the best teams. I mean, they got into just trap meets with they beat Colorado and Edmonton. They won some big games, so they can beat some of the bigger teams. It just needs to be more consistent, and they need to have better defense and better goaltending.
Now, look, I think I read the Hockey News had their preview for the Metropolitan Division, and for some reason they took the Devils to finish last, and I was very surprised at that, especially because I think the Flyers should be worse, and I think the Flyers organizationally just look way worse, honestly. Especially with what they did with Yandel, it just looks like a more downtrodden organization. The Devils, I think, have picked up a lot more. And then you have the possibility, I know I said the Islanders should make the playoffs, but there's the possibility of an Islander downturn. And again, Pittsburgh has been complacent over the last 5 years. Columbus is still kind of up and coming. They're kind of in the same place the Devils are. It really is going to depend on health and goaltending for New Jersey. Goaltending is going to be the biggest part. If they can get better on the back end, they will be a good team, and they will at least be in contention for the playoffs.
Well, they've gotten better goaltending, and the back end did shape up, and all of a sudden they're on top of the very competitive Metro Division. So maybe as a New Jersey resident now, Nick, you should check out the Devils.
Mike, forget the division. If the season ended today, the Devils are the President's Trophy winners.
Yeah, I watched them play the other night.
They lead the NHL in points.
Yeah, they got really good really quick.
Must be nice. I mean, I sit here as a Ranger fan. I'm not a big hockey person. I don't really know much about it. I know the Rangers are supposed to be really good this year, and it looks like they're kind of middle of the pack. So hopefully they pick that up. But the Devils, number one team in the league.
Never would have seen that coming. I would have seen them, being in contention to the playoffs. Number one team in the league is incredible. But I gave Chris credit for at least mentioning that, if these things happen, they can be really good.
Well, we'll see how it plays out the rest of the season. But as of right now, if the season were to end today, the New Jersey Devils are going to win the President's Trophy.
They certainly are. And I have another fun one for you here. Talk about your favorite manager, Aaron Boone.
He's not my favorite.
He is your manager.
He's not my least favorite. I don't like him. I don't hate him. Like a lot of Yankee fans hate him. A lot of Yankee fans, I don't hate him. I definitely don't like him. I'm indifferent to him. But let's hear it.
Yeah, I talked to Dan Federico after the Yankees were eliminated from the playoffs by the Astros about some of Boone's penchant for making excuses here. Remember the roof that being open being a problem and the whole exit velo thing. So let's hear what Dan has to say about Boone's excuses.
It's become more of a theme than we all like to hear. I mean, this is what it is now. We're gonna in a couple of days we're gonna get the Cashman press conference where, well, we ran into a buzzsaw and we should have been healthy and we didn't have these players who weren't there and we didn't get hot at the right time. The excuses are going to keep piling on, and it's going to be sick and tiring for a lot of fans, including myself. I mean, this is something now we've been dealing with since 2018. I mean, when you look back, 2017 was that they shouldn't be here, but they made it, and it was a feel good, and it was like, wow, these guys are ahead of schedule. But 2018 up until 2022, this team was primed to win a World Series. They should have been in it. I mean, that's how all the fans viewed it. That's how they were positioned. That's how they were covered by, a lot of the media. That's just what it was. And time again, they've come up short, one reason or another. And every single time there's another excuse, and we got to get ready for it because Cashman's going to throw it at us. Like I said, whether it's going to be no DJ and Benintendi or, they just weren't hot at this time. And there's going to be something that we're not going to want to hear, but it's coming.
Absolutely here. I mean, as a Yankee fan, I've not really talked to you on the podcast about this thing. Like, do the excuses bother you?
They don't bother me from Boone because I don't know what he's supposed to say. They bother me from the front office because the front office has the power to change things. He doesn't have the power to put Manny Machado at third base like he should be.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that power. Brian Cashman had that power, and it was not even considered. They offered him a horrible contract. And you look at Machado now, it's like, oh, we had Machado, we may have beaten the Astros.
Yeah, or Bryce Harper.
But they decided that wasn't right. And you're looking at a guy who in San Diego now is coming third and second in the MVP in the last 3 seasons. But they didn't get him. When it comes to Boone, he can only do so much. The thing I don't like about him is the way he handles the bullpen, but at the same time, what is he supposed to say after? We're not as good as this team, or what is he supposed to say? We need better players. I just don't know. It's not. I don't blame him. I completely blame the front office.
I don't love the mentality though, the excuses, because that sort of I feel like that's a loser mentality you're creating. Instead of like if the roof was closed, that ball might have gone out, we might have won the game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't like the excuses, but it doesn't bother me the way it bothers me from the front office when you have Brian Cashman tell us that the league is caught up to us. Like, caught up to you. You were never ahead.
Yeah, but you got lapped like at least 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, you've had some good seasons. Sure, they've been a good team the last 6 seasons. They've been a great team. You made the playoffs every season. They've gotten to the ALCS 3 times. That's great. And it is, but don't tell me you're the lead. If anyone, you got to be catching up to the Astros and the Red Sox. I mean, because even though the Red Sox in the last 6 years, because you know how Boston is, they suck one year, then they won the World Series. But they've probably been bad a couple times in those last 6 years, but they did win a World Series.
Yeah, that's true. Let's go ahead now to a fun moment here. Something I heard earlier in the episode. It also came out in October. I talked to Jeff Pearlman about his book here about Bo Jackson, the last folk hero. Nick, I have the physical book here. I read this thing right before I talked to Jeff. It was definitely a fun read. I highly recommend it for your holiday shopping list. You anybody who likes Bo Jackson?
I don't know anyone specific.
Maybe
who's a Bo Jackson fan in my life.
Well, maybe something for
I like him.
Yeah, maybe your dad would enjoy the book.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, before you make a decision about purchasing the book or not, let me give you a clip from earlier in this episode that I played here. It's like some of the fun Bo Jackson myths that Jeff Pearlman unearthed. This is from episode 308 originally and earlier in the holiday special here. So this is from author Jeff Pearlman.
Hi there, too. Can I go too?
Sure.
He played a high school game against Fairfield High in Alabama. And all right, everyone kept telling me, man, he hit a ball and it went so high that by the time it came down, he was at third base. I heard that story. I was like, can I curse in your
yeah,
podcast?
Sure.
I was like, that's bullshit. Right? That's bullshit. That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. All right. I tracked down Eddie Scott, the left fielder for Fairfield High. He's like, yep. He's like, I was playing outfield. The ball was so high, I could not see the ball. It came down, it bounced on the grass. I look up, Bo is rounding third. Ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous.
Yeah.
The other one is it's a first night game in the University of Georgia's baseball history. This is Bo's junior year. And they've been trying to get lights for years. Steve Weber, the coach, finally gets the lights. And Bo Jackson is booed mercilessly in the outfield for Auburn. And his first at bat, he grounds out, and the fans just boo him. They let him have it. First night game. Have you seen the movie The Natural?
I have.
So you know the famous scene, it hits the lights and it explodes.
Yes.
All right. This is 29 days before The Natural comes out. Bo Jackson's second at bat, he hits a home run that hits the lights. Hits the lights. He runs back out to the outfield. I think he was playing right field. And the fans stand up and start bowing at him. These are Georgia fans bowing. His next 2 at-bats, he hits 2 more home runs. And his last at-bat, he doubles, and everyone boos.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And there's no video of that game, but I interviewed so many people, Georgia players, Auburn players, spectators, media. I feel like I got a real good feel for it.
Yeah, this is some of the fun stuff you find in this book here. It's a lot of incredible things you hear about Bo Jackson.
It's really interesting. I mean, I always wonder about him because, he's a legend, right?
Yep.
But when you look at his statistics in the NFL, for example, they're not legend statistics. When you look at his baseball statistics, they're not legendary, but he's a legend. So it's something that there has to be more to the story. So if you don't know about Bo Jackson, I guess that book is perfect because that'll explain to you, besides the fact that he played 2 sports, which is unbelievable, why he's a legend. Because both of those sports, he was pretty good, but he wasn't fantastic, right?
Yeah, he also had that hip injury that really ruined his football career.
Of course. But even the seasons he played, his numbers were not off the charts. At all.
I will say
not even in those days standards.
I will say the book does explain a lot in terms of why, like, with all the talent that Bo had, like why he was incredible, and yet the stats did not pop. There's a good explanation in the book about that.
And that's exactly what I'm interested in because as an outsider who doesn't know the book, who wasn't alive at the time that Bo played basically any sport. I mean, I was barely alive when he played a little bit of baseball, but wasn't alive for any of his NFL time. To me, I look at his stats and go, why was he so popular? He looked like he was okay. And I'm sure that explains it.
It sure does here. Let's go ahead. Couple more left. Our friend Dan DeMarti, we had on the Sky Guys podcast to talk about episode 5 of Andor, by the way, the worst episode of the show. He's a big Colts fan, and Colts made some news this year when they got rid of Frank Reich and they hired Jeff Saturday off the street to be their head coach. What do you think about that when it happened?
I thought that they were trying to be as bad as possible, but they're losing sight of the fact that they aren't that bad. They're pretty bad, but they're not the worst team, and they're trying to be the worst team, and they're like, they don't want to be in purgatory, and they're probably going to be in purgatory. So they're like, how do we make ourselves be really bad, even though we're not that bad? In other words, remember when the Cowboys were so bad because Romo was hurt and they were able to draft Zeke?
Yep.
Like, that happens a lot where a team is just really, really bad and they're able to draft someone because of an injury, so they're artificially bad, and then they're actually really good the next year. They're trying to do that. They're trying to keep everything else on their team, but maybe we'll be really, really bad and we'll get a quarterback and then we'll be great. But they're not that bad. So they're trying everything in their power to be that bad.
Yeah, well, I got a good theory on that. I spoke to Fansize NFL insider Matt Verderan the week that firing happened, so he had some thoughts on this one. So let's go to that one, episode 313.
I think the word circus is apt. Look, everybody talks about Saturday and what does it mean. Sure, we have that conversation, but to me, it's more about what it says. If you're Jim Irsay and you're doing this, you're telling every one of those coaches on staff that they're useless, that they're not a better choice to be an interim head coach than a guy who's never coached above the high school level. And I don't want to hear that, well, Jeff Saturday's played, and, that's why. Okay, well, you have Reggie Wayne on staff. Why isn't he the interim head coach? Why isn't Cato Jr. the interim head coach? Well, I mean, you've got guys like Bubba Ventrone who have been special teams coaches for years, can't get a shot. I mean, to me, it just says everything about the Colts that they don't trust any of their own guys in the building. So they're going to go with this outside guy because Jim Irsay on a whim just decided that would be the right thing to do. You're alienating everybody in your building. I talked to a lot of people in the NFL right after it happened who were shocked. And a lot of I had one guy flat out say, I think the only reason they're doing it is they want to lose every game the rest of the year. I don't necessarily agree with that opinion, but I think that it's indicative of a franchise that has no rudder.
I think he nailed it.
Yeah, I think so too. I do.
Yeah, I mean, he was right on with your theory. You had people in the league actually questioning, are they actually trying to tank?
Yeah, they're trying to tank, but they're not bad enough to tank. I'm not disclosure. I am not telling you the Colts are a good team by any stretch of the imagination.
They're mediocre,
but they're not that bad. They're like a 6-win team, maybe 7 if you get a little bit of luck, and that's not bad enough to get the top quarterback in the draft, and they want him really badly.
Yeah, well, they've been missing some luck over the last 5 years. It's really hurt them.
It's really crazy. Think about what they would be in the last couple of seasons if they had Andrew Luck.
Yeah. And
never know.
Crazy thing is he definitely does not regret his decision.
No. What a shame, though. He was a great quarterback. He really was. And he retired, how old was he? 29?
Yeah. He only been in the league for 7 years.
Yeah, and he was improving. He had that one a couple of injury-plagued seasons, but then he seemed like he figured it out again. And then it was just like, nope, I'm out of here.
Yeah, well, I think he made the
every year he was really healthy. They made the playoffs, and they won a game almost every year in the playoffs too.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go on. Let's go back to the Sky Guys for a minute because we have to include an Andor shout out here because that show was the highlight of our Star Wars coverage over on Sky Guys this year.
That show kicked ass.
It did. One of the 3 biggest shows of the year alongside House of the Dragon and Rings of Power.
Now, is that true?
Those are the big 3 right now. Everybody's talking about it. Nobody's really talking about Stranger Things anymore.
So more, that's what I was asking, more than Stranger Things?
I think the Stranger Things thing, it burned out so fast. There's only over 2 contrary things. And now everybody's talking about House of the Dragon, Rings of Power, and I think there's being conversation right now. Which of those 3 is the best?
I'm going to take a quick moment here to say that that's why I appreciate the weekly releases, and I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, because it
keeps the conversation going longer. Simple as that.
Because Stranger Things is like a comet, and then we had it longer this year because they had the break between the first 7 episodes and the last 2. But ordinarily, it's a weekend, it's over, and you have a week of follow up.
I say it all the time. It's very stressful. If you're a big Stranger Things fan, big Netflix person, that show comes out usually on a Friday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It comes out on a Friday. you're at work, whatever. Let's say you're working in an office 5 days a week. You're at work, so you can't watch it. You got to watch. If you don't watch that weekend, by Monday morning, you are behind at the water cooler, and you cannot discuss it. It's extremely stressful. You need to binge it that weekend, or you're done. You're behind. It's all over the internet. It's gone. 2 weeks later, no one cares.
Yep. If you had to guess where we're going in Andor, you want to take a guess on what we are discussing?
One way out.
Correct. Let's go listen to Kino Loy. This is episode 314, or episode 10 recap of Andor.
You need to run, climb, kill. You need to help each other. You see someone who's confused, someone who's lost. You get them moving and you keep them moving until we put this place behind us. There are 5,000 of us. If we can fight half as hard as we've been working, we will be home in no time. One way out. One way out.
Okay, so that's the speech right there. And I think, honestly, Joe, when they're saying in the Emmy reel for this show, this has to be the number one. This has to be the episode they send in, because this speech is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's a legend. He's been in, countless things. I mean, he just gets you fired up, and he just wants you to follow him into battle.
Yeah, Nick, this speech was incredible. I mean, like, Andy Serkis, like, they do a good job here. I mean, you don't have the visual aid, obviously, on the podcast medium, but, like, you can see sort of, like, he's hesitant at the beginning, and Cassian sort of, like, encouraging him to, like, sort of, like, speak from the heart, and then, like, the emotion really pours out. We got the episode title in there, One Way Out, which I think is fantastic, like, line, remember this speech by, and the absolute, like, range of emotions, the music in the background. This is, like, little perfection, in my opinion.
I agree. It was a fantastic speech. It got everyone pumped up. It got the audience pumped up. Everyone was ready to go, and that's it.
I mean, not much more you can say about this speech. Is I think we said on the Sky Guys, the best speech in the history of Star Wars.
Yeah, and what makes it more admirable when you think about it at the end of the day, because you don't know at the time when he's making the speech that he knows he's not getting out and he's not surviving, because he knows they're on top of water and he knows he can't swim. So he's doing this all for everyone else, for the sake of the people, and knowing that he's not going to benefit from it, and that's very admirable.
Yeah, and for people, Sky Guys listeners who did not get to that episode here, Pete Costner happened to miss that week, so our good friend Joe Simone happened to show up for that one episode as the third Sky Guy, so he picked a great one to hop on.
Yeah, Pete has some bad luck, because my understanding, so he missed that episode. If my understanding also that when you were doing Mando Season 2, before we had gotten the Sky Guys together, really, those episodes are on the feed, but it wasn't really the same. But it's my understanding he did the Frog Lady.
Yeah, he did. He did episode 2, which is the Frog Lady.
But Pete's had some bad luck. So he's had some bad luck in the character draft. He's had some bad luck with the Frog Lady. So hopefully he can get back on his feet.
He had to sit through 7 episodes of Book of Boba Fett.
That's right.
All right. Last but not least, we're in a little bit of a World Cup fever here, as the World Cup tournament started to wrap up here. And prior to the tournament, I had a preview of Martino Puccio, who is a big soccer guy. He had some thoughts on Team USA, so we'll close out the clips here with this one. This is Martino's assessment of Team USA from episode 315.
Well, this is the youngest one that we've had. Experience is there. A lot of these kids have gone and won the Nations League, which is kind of like a second-rate tournament. But at the same time, they also won the Gold Cup, which is the equivalent of our Euro. It happens all the time. So it's not the craziest of victories, but they have won and they're very young. So that's something that's very important in my opinion. We have more players now on the U.S. men's national team squad that have played in Champions League matches. So the amount of players that have played or appeared in a Champions League match is higher than any number that the U.S. has ever had, which just for example is we're having guys play at the highest of levels and they're playing on pretty good teams. So that's great to see. There's still a bunch of injury question marks. Certain players like Christian Pulisic haven't been that great. In recent months, he's been struggling, but when they play together as at the national team, that third place seemed a little worrying for some. Greg Berhalter is a controversial figure because a lot of people thought that he got the job based off of nepotism. And when his brother was on the board of Team USA, there's so many factors into this that you don't know what you're going to get. There's quality, there's talent. I think that whatever happens in the 90 minutes, we're going to find out about them because we truly don't know at this level. Like you mentioned, we're talking about 8 years ago now. A lot of those players, if any, are gone at this point. And this is a new era for Team USA. I think it's a great precursor for what is going to happen when we host the tournament in 2026. Do I think we're going to be that great? That's it. We'll do that in another 4 years and we'll talk about this episode. But I think guys like Yunus Musa, who is such a top young talent that I love, like it's going to be X Factor guys like that. We're talking about teenagers, early 20s that are playing in big clubs in Europe. How do they respond to this pressure?
So they did pretty well. I mean, like they had a nice job getting out of the group stage here.
Yeah, I watched that game. Nice job. I tell you, I don't know hockey. There's one thing I know less than hockey. It's soccer. I have no idea.
Yeah, I gotta say,
I wait for everybody else's reaction. I know goals are good. Goals against us are bad, obviously, but I just wait for if I see a kick that goes really far. I wait for everyone else. I'm in the room, and they go, "Oh, nice play." I go, "Oh yeah, nice play." I have no idea.
Yeah, the thing while Martino said is correct, I think is a great assessment, is that this team is so young. It's a lot of babies on this team, and that this success they had in this tournament, getting through the knockout stage, set up real well because in 4 years we host this tournament, and this is a team that really could be primed for a deep run when it's on U.S. soil.
Home field advantage, maybe.
Yeah, home field advantage with Canada and Mexico, but we will be on U.S. soil for every game.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, that's our trip down memory lane this year. Over an hour in here. Nick, thanks for coming on and taking the trip with me. It was a lot of fun.
I have one complaint.
What's that?
There were 0 clips about winning time. Was that not covered on this podcast? And by the way, if it was covered, why was I not called? Being a basketball fan and a Laker fan.
Because you did not watch it on time. You were behind.
I was a little behind, yeah. That was true. But no clip from it. I'm surprised.
Well, listen to the beginning of this podcast again. Jeff Perlman talks about winning time because it's his book that inspired the show.
Well, I'm excited for the second season. I think it's great. I know some of the actors were some of the characters, like the real life people, were a little upset about the way their character was portrayed, but I think it was a fantastic show.
Yeah, I cover it myself. That's why I didn't cut any clips of it from season 1. Season 2, we got to come on and talk about it.
No, get me on as soon as you can. Love to.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. And people want to follow us up on the Sky Guys podcast because our holiday special will be coming out around the same time as this one. How can they do that?
Oh, yeah, that's at Sky Guys podcast on Instagram. I thought you said this is coming out at the same time as the Sky Guys. Oh, how could they do that? That's what I thought you had said. I think you cut out a little bit. But you mean, how do they do that? How do they follow it?
Yep.
And that's at Sky Guys podcast. That is how you do that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about all the shows we did on our holiday special on Sky Guys. Like talk a little about all 3 live action shows. We did some Tales of the Jedi here. We'll give you some clips from there as well. And we get a lot of fun moments on that podcast. So definitely check that out.
And that's going to be a lot of fun to go over a year in review there. So I'm excited to do that. And, I don't know when you plan to release this episode. I know we had mentioned already we're recording here December 1st, but happy holidays.
Yep, week before Christmas. So let's see the Christmas present to the Just and the Suffering audience. So stay tuned, guys. We're going to be coming back more on the podcast, NFL picks right after this.